Clara Bennett, a bright and ambitious young woman, had just started her dream job at Thorne Enterprises, one of New York's most prestigious corporations. It was the culmination of years of hard work, graduating at the top of her class at a renowned business school and beating out hundreds of other candidates to secure the role. That morning, Clara arrived early, eager to make a strong impression on her new team. But the day didn't go as planned. A small accident at the coffee cart left her silk blouse stained with hot coffee, forcing her to find somewhere to change. Desperate, she ducked into a conference room she believed was empty. Standing in front of the large mirror on the wall, Clara began unbuttoning her soiled blouse. But just as she slipped it off her shoulders, the door swung open. A tall man in a perfectly tailored suit walked in. It was none other than Elliot Thorne, the CEO of the company. Their eyes met in the mirror, and Clara froze. "You," Elliot began, but Clara quickly grabbed her backup blouse and held it against her chest. "Get out," she yelled, her cheeks flaming red. Elliot apologized, but instead of leaving immediately, he paused for a moment, his expression unreadable yet slightly amused. Finally, he stepped out, leaving Clara with her heart racing. She didn't know then that this awkward encounter would change her life forever. Clara Bennett gradually adapted to the fast-paced environment at Thorne Enterprises. She worked harder than anyone else, determined to prove she deserved her position. Each day, she arrived early, meticulously prepared, and always brought innovative ideas to the table. Elliot Thorne, the company's CEO, couldn't help but notice Clara. Her intelligence and drive captivated him. Though he maintained a professional demeanor during meetings, his gaze often lingered on Clara, as if drawn to her energy and determination. One late evening, Clara was asked to stay behind to finalize a marketing strategy for an important campaign. Elliot decided to join her, offering his input. In the quiet conference room, under the warm glow of the lights, they exchanged ideas. Clara presented a bold plan, and Elliot couldn't hide his admiration. "You truly have a remarkable vision," Elliot said, his deep voice resonating in the stillness. His gaze lingered on Clara longer than usual. Clara smiled back, but she could feel the tension in the air. As Clara bent down to organize her materials, Elliot stepped closer, so close she could feel his breath. "Clara," he said softly, his voice carrying an emotion she couldn't quite place. Clara looked up and their eyes met. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Elliot leaned in, his breath warm and steady against her cheek, and kissed her. The kiss was intense and sudden, catching Clara off guard. For a split second, her mind screamed at her to stop, but the pull between them was too strong to resist. At first, she froze, her hands trembling at her sides. But as the warmth of his lips consumed her, she felt a spark ignite deep within her, awakening something she had long buried. Her arms instinctively found their way around his neck, pulling him closer as the kiss deepened. The temperature in the room seemed to rise, the air charged with unspoken desires. Elliot's hands were firm yet tender as they explored her back, drawing her closer with each passing second. Passion overwhelmed reason as Elliot gently lifted her onto the large conference table. Papers and documents fluttered to the floor, but neither of them noticed. Every touch, every kiss, was a declaration, raw and unrestrained, as they surrendered completely to the moment. Clara shivered as his lips trailed down her neck, his hands both gentle and firm. "Elliot," she whispered, her voice a mixture of surprise and desire. He looked up, his eyes saying everything he couldn't put into words. She was everything he wanted. They let themselves be carried away by the moment, consumed by the undeniable pull between them. Clara felt the tenderness and passion in every touch, every kiss. That night, they let their barriers fall away, losing themselves in each other until the early hours of the morning. When Clara woke up, she found herself still on the conference table, the morning sunlight streaming through the office windows. Elliot, with his arms wrapped around her, smiled as she stirred. "Good morning," he murmured, leaning down to press a kiss to her forehead. "What did we just do?" Clara whispered, her voice tinged with both embarrassment and fear. "What I've wanted to do for a long time," Elliot replied, his gaze sincere. But worry began to creep into Clara's thoughts. "Will this ruin my career? Am I making a mistake?" she wondered. Elliot, sensing her hesitation, gently took her hand, his reassuring eyes telling her everything would be fine. For now, Clara decided to set aside her concerns. That night marked the beginning of a secret relationship, one filled with passion, sweetness, and undeniable risks. The secret relationship between Clara Bennett and Elliot Thorne continued for months. They carefully concealed their feelings at work, maintaining a professional distance in front of colleagues. But when they were alone, the tension they suppressed erupted into moments of unbridled passion. Clara felt a mix of happiness and anxiety. She loved how Elliot always listened to her, valued her opinions, and treated her with tenderness in private. But the deeper she fell for him, the more she feared for their future. Is he truly serious about us, or am I just a temporary fling? Her fears began to take shape when Sophie Blackwood, Elliot's former business partner and ex-girlfriend, returned. Sophie was a powerful, confident woman who knew how to command attention. During a strategic meeting, she made pointed remarks about Elliot's past, fueling Clara's insecurities. "Remember when we used to work together, Elliot? You always knew how to make the women on your team feel special," Sophie said, her voice laced with insinuation, silencing the entire room. Clara kept her composure, but Sophie's words lingered in her mind. After the meeting, Sophie approached Clara, her sharp gaze cutting through any defenses. "Do you think you're special, Clara?" Sophie asked, a mocking smile on her lips. "I was in your position once. He always makes women feel like they're irreplaceable. But in the end," Clara froze, unsure how to respond. Sophie continued, "He promised me everything, just like he's promising you now. But when he didn't need me anymore, he moved on. I just wanted to warn you before you get hurt." Sophie's words cut deep, leaving Clara questioning everything. She replayed moments between her and Elliot, wondering if their relationship was truly special or if she was just another name on a long list. The breaking point came at a charity gala attended by the entire company. Sophie, determined to corner Clara, publicly spoke about her past with Elliot. "Clara, did you know that Elliot once promised me the European strategy portfolio? Then he chose someone else. He has a habit of making women feel irreplaceable, but the truth is, anyone can be replaced." Clara felt the weight of every gaze in the room. Elliot tried to defuse the situation, but it only made her humiliation worse. After the event, Clara spent the night pacing in her apartment, her thoughts racing. She replayed Sophie's words over and over, each one cutting deeper than the last. "Am I just another pawn in his game?" she whispered to herself, the ache in her chest growing unbearable. The next morning, with her decision made, Clara walked into Elliot's office. Her hands trembled as she clutched the resignation letter she had typed at 2 a.m., the words blurring through her tears. "I can't do this anymore," Clara said, her voice breaking as she placed the letter on his desk. "I trusted you with everything, my career, my heart, but now I don't even know who you are." "Clara, please," Elliot pleaded, his voice desperate. "You know me better than anyone else. You have to believe me." "How can I?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You didn't fight for me, Elliot. You let Sophie tear us apart." "Clara, I love you. Everything Sophie said is a lie." Elliot tried to explain, but Clara cut him off. "How do I know that? I can't live with this constant doubt. I need to leave before I lose everything, my career, my self-respect, and myself." Clara walked out of the office, leaving Elliot standing there, devastated and powerless. After leaving Thorne Enterprises, Clara Bennett moved to Boston to start fresh. She knew she needed distance, not just from Elliot, but from the painful memories of their complicated relationship. With her characteristic determination, Clara founded her own company, Bennett Digital, specializing in digital marketing strategies. The journey wasn't easy at first, but her talent and perseverance paid off. Major contracts started rolling in, and Bennett Digital quickly became one of Boston's rising stars in the marketing world. 2 months after arriving in Boston, Clara discovered she was pregnant. The news left her both shocked and anxious. Sleepless nights followed as she debated whether to tell Elliot about the baby. But memories of Sophie's words and the pain of their past convinced her to keep it a secret. She gave birth to a baby girl, Lila, on a moonlit night. As she gazed into her daughter's sharp gray eyes, Clara couldn't deny how much Lila resembled Elliot. But she vowed to give Lila a full and happy life, even without a father. 2 years later, Bennett Digital was thriving. Clara graced the cover of a business magazine, holding Lila's hand, proud of both her career and her role as a mother. But that very article caught the attention of Elliot Thorne. One evening, as Clara was preparing dinner for her daughter, her phone rang. The name on the screen made her freeze. It was a name she thought she'd never see again. "Clara, we need to talk," Elliot's deep voice came through, steady but resolute. "I saw the article. Lila, is she mine?" Clara felt her heart stop. She glanced over at her daughter, who was happily playing with a stuffed elephant, Lila's favorite toy. She knew that the life she had worked so hard to build was about to change forever. Clara agreed to meet Elliot, not only because he insisted on explaining, but because she also needed to hear the truth. They met at a quiet cafe, a place where they could talk openly without interruptions. Elliot arrived on time, looking tense but resolute. When Clara sat down, she glanced at him, her emotions swirling. Anger, doubt, and a sliver of hope. "Clara," Elliot began, his voice gentle but firm, "I know I've hurt you, but you need to hear the full truth. Sophie, she fabricated everything." Clara frowned. "What are you talking about?" Elliot took a deep breath, his hands clenched into fists on the table. "Sophie couldn't accept that I ended things with her. She made up lies, spread rumors, anything to drive a wedge between us. But Clara, the truth is, I never betrayed you." His voice cracked as he leaned forward. "You're not some fleeting affair or part of a game. You're the woman who challenges me, inspires me, and makes me want to be better. I love you, Clara. I always have." Clara stared at him, her walls slowly crumbling under the weight of his words. Memories of their late nights together, the way he listened to her, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world, came flooding back. What if I was wrong, she thought, her heart aching with both relief and fear. Clara looked into Elliot's eyes and saw an undeniable sincerity. "What about the things she said about your past relationships?" "She only told you half the story," Elliot said, his gaze never leaving hers. "Yes, I've made mistakes in the past, but what I feel for you is completely different. I love you, Clara, and I don't want to lose you or Lila." Elliot's confession left Clara speechless. Memories of their happiest moments together, his unwavering support, and the way he had always valued her ideas came flooding back. "I misunderstood you," Clara whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Elliot, I'm sorry." Elliot smiled softly, taking her hand in his. "What matters is that you believe me now. I want a chance to start over. Not just for Lila, but for us." Clara nodded, a sense of relief washing over her. "We can try again, but it has to be slow. I need to know you're serious." "I understand," Elliot said, his voice steady. "I'll do whatever it takes to prove it." For the first time in years, Clara felt she could trust in a brighter future. For herself, for Elliot, and for Lila. Clara sat in her office, staring out the window, trying to collect her thoughts after her meeting with Elliot at the cafe. No matter how much she tried to steady herself, his heartfelt words echoed in her mind. Suddenly, her office door swung open and Elliot stepped inside. He closed the door behind him, his intense gray eyes locking onto hers. "Elliot, what are you doing here?" Clara stood, but before she could say more, Elliot was already striding toward her, closing the distance between them. "Clara," he began, his voice low and brimming with emotion, "I can't wait any longer. I need you to know something." Before he could finish, Clara looked into his eyes, the same determined, smoldering gaze she had fallen for years ago. "I already believe you, Elliot," she whispered. He stopped, surprised, but then a slow smile spread across his face. "Then let me show you how much I mean it," he murmured. Before she could respond, Elliot leaned in and kissed her. It was their first kiss after years of separation, fierce and unrestrained. Clara felt a flood of emotions, love, longing, and a passion that had been buried deep, overwhelming her like a storm. "Elliot," she whispered as he pulled her closer against his chest. "I've missed you, Clara. Not just you at work, but all of you," he said, his lips grazing her neck, sending shivers down her spine. They couldn't stop. The restrained longing exploded into fiery intensity. Elliot guided her back toward her desk. Papers tumbled to the floor, but neither of them cared. His hands moved with deliberate passion, his lips exploring every inch of her as though relearning her body. They came together with a raw, unrelenting fervor, just like those late nights in his conference room years ago. "We can start over," Clara murmured between kisses. "Not just start over," Elliot replied, his eyes blazing with conviction. "I want it all. You, Lila, and a future I'll never let slip away again." In that moment, Clara knew she was ready to give him her heart once more. Elliot knew that to truly be part of Clara's life, he needed to build a bond with Lila, their 2-year-old daughter. Though still very young, Lila was cautious and slow to warm up to strangers. Their first meeting took place at a park near Clara's home. Lila was sitting in the sandbox, scooping sand into a small bucket to build a tiny tower. Elliot carefully sat down beside her, making sure not to startle her. "Your castle looks amazing," he said softly, his tone encouraging. Lila looked up at him, her wide gray eyes filled with curiosity. She didn't say anything, simply watching him for a few seconds before turning back to her work. Clara, observing from a distance, smiled at her daughter's calm reaction. Elliot gently picked up a small pebble and placed it near the little tower. "How about we build a bridge here?" he asked, gesturing with his hand. Lila studied the pebble, then looked back at him. After a pause, she nodded hesitantly. "Bridge," she said, her small voice testing the word. Elliot felt a glimmer of hope. It was a start. In the weeks that followed, Elliot found every opportunity to connect with Lila. On a visit to the zoo, Lila became fascinated by the elephants. "Elephant," she exclaimed excitedly, pointing at the enormous creatures lumbering by. "You like elephants?" Elliot asked, crouching to her eye level. Lila nodded vigorously, her tiny hands clapping together. "Big!" "That's right, they're big and strong," he said, gently ruffling her curls. Bit by bit, Elliot became a fixture in Lila's life. He learned to read bedtime stories to her, though his storytelling often had to be shortened to match her limited attention span. Clara's heart softened as she watched Lila lean against Elliot's shoulder, occasionally murmuring short words like, "More, Daddy." The first time Lila called Elliot Daddy, naturally, his heart swelled with emotion. 2 years after Elliot and Clara officially started over, their lives had completely transformed. Elliot relocated Thorn Enterprises' headquarters to Boston, not just to be closer to his family, but to create a balance between work and personal life, a balance he had always missed before. The three of them now lived in a cozy home in the suburbs, where Lila could run freely and enjoy her carefree childhood. On a crisp spring morning, Clara woke to the gentle sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of Lila's cheerful laughter filling the house. "Daddy, I did it!" Lila squealed, proudly showing off a drawing of an elephant, her favorite animal. Elliot, still in his pajamas, knelt down to admire the picture. "That's amazing, Lila. I think we should frame this masterpiece." Clara walked into the living room, smiling as she saw Elliot and Lila sitting on the floor, surrounded by crayons and paper. "You two are making a mess again," she teased, holding a steaming cup of coffee. "Don't worry, it's all part of the plan," Elliot said, winking playfully. Their lives were now filled with simple but precious moments like these. Cozy dinners, trips to the park, and bedtime stories had turned their house into a true home. One special day, Elliot got down on one knee in their backyard garden. This time, he held out a new ring and said, "Clara, I want to thank you for giving me a second chance. You're not just my love, you're the person who turned this house into a home. Will you marry me again?" Tears streamed down Clara's face, but they were tears of joy. "Of course," she said, pulling him into a tight embrace. At their intimate wedding, attended only by close friends and family, Lila was entrusted with carrying the rings. She beamed with pride as she watched her parents exchange vows, knowing she was an essential part of this beautiful moment. In the end, Clara and Elliot had built something they once thought was impossible, a perfect family.